Dude, this is the amount of people that are struggling out there because of these fucking billionaires. And they got us all arguing liberal and conservative. We got to stop doing that. Like, I am so tired of hearing about people going to bed worried about what's going to happen next week. There is so much fucking money in this country. And there's so much work being done, you know. And if you work a full fucking week at a job, you should be able to pay your fucking rent. You shouldn't have to go out and get another fucking job and still be struggling. It's bad for the country because then the kids don't see their parents and they're not getting the upbringing that they need. It's so fucking, these fucking billionaires, they need to be put down, you know, like fucking rabid dogs. They're like rabid with fucking greed. And just going out and just dividing everybody.
Once upon a time, in a world not so different to ours, vast inequalities led to social upheaval. Today, as we examine our own society, we must ask, are we repeating history?
So they've reduced that. Cheapest breakfast going is cereal. We've got the fancy pasta here, but this is also reduced, which is why I've got a couple of packets of it.
Fiona works 5 days a week, regularly misses meals, and always buys discounted food.
Whenever I go round supermarkets, I try and pick up whatever the reduced sticker deals are.
Yet having enough money to feed her 2 children still requires hours of planning, preparation, and scavenging.
In a recent episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored, we saw a fascinating yet deeply troubling discussion unfold. Gary Stevenson, someone who I've hosted on the Sunday Roast, a former Citibank trader turned economic activist, debated Dave Rubin and Piers Morgan about wealth inequality. Gary, who made millions betting on the collapse of the working class, argues that our economy is rigged.
It's my generation who will never own property. The middle class are losing their homes, the middle class are losing their wealth. Where is that wealth going? Where is that wealth
And your
going?
argument is it's going just to the super rich.
Where else?
So they're getting...
And that reminded me of pre-revolutionary France, as well as some of the comments made by Piers Morgan and David Rubin. And I'm going to show you some statistics from the 1800s and compare it to today with inequality and food and diet, and you're going to be shocked.
And I've been betting for 14 years that the working class in my country and the working class in your country will collapse into desperate, worsening poverty year after year. I'm a multimillionaire from doing that, from betting on that. Traders message me every day. They say what's going to happen. I say it's going to get worse.
In Thomas Piketty's Capital in the 21st Century, he claims just before the revolution in 1789, the proportion of national wealth held by the top 10% was 90%. And in the UK in 2021, 685,000 Britons, that's the top 1%, held about 3.4 trillion. Essentially, 1% in the UK own about 60% of its wealth. And that mirrors pre-revolutionary France to quite an extent. Here's another one. The 4 richest Britons own more than 20 million Britons combined.
Who's doing the taking? Which group in our society is getting richer and which group is getting poorer?
So again,
who is doing the taking?
Again, so I accept that the rich are getting richer.
I'm just here to protect my people.
Poorer.
I'm just here to protect my people.
I think what you would want to do
I think we're agreed
then,
about the reality.
Right,
what we're disagreeing about is the solution.
Is the solution,
problem.
and the solution is get the government out of the way. Stop spending. Stop.
But you think the government should be much more involved?
Let me take you by hand and lead you through the streets of London. I'll show you something.
But again, that's because your government clearly has done policies, it seems you both are in agreement on that, that hasn't created the conditions for economic prosperity. You might want to talk about importing people that you then had to put on the dole.
They've been slashing the state for 14 years, boss. They slashed the state, they slashed the state, they slashed the state.
So you think if the state
and now my friends'
only...
kids don't have no places to go, they don't have no local services,
if the
the police barely
bigger,
exist,
things would be better.
The hospitals aren't working, the schools are shutting down.
So if only that system had more money, it would be better?
So the American solution, Rubin's solution, is to reduce spending on roads, trains, hospitals and schools. Rubin's and Morgan's perspective didn't end there in its daftness. Have a listen to this about the NHS.
If you take the NHS,
it needs more money.
If you take our health system, the NHS, Tony Blair, when he was Prime Minister, pumped billions more into the NHS and it barely touched the sides. It didn't deal with the problem of the infrastructure of the NHS. And that was a clear illustration of money, just pumping money into things is not necessarily the answer. Right?
Okay, but who are we pumping money into?
Well, you are absolutely right. I think we can all agree, we have all agreed. You're right, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So what do we do about this?
The NHS has been voted number one for a variety of reasons, including efficiency in 2010, number one in the world in 2017, even as late as 2021. What is Piers talking about? But there is something that could be making us ill, and I'm going to shock you with these stats. When I was looking into the data, I checked diets. The average French peasant at the time would have between 1,800 and 2,000 calories a day. In contrast, modern data today suggests that the lowest third in the UK only have 100 calories more than a French peasant in the 1700s. But the thing that really blew my mind was that British farmers during that same period would have up to 3,000 calories, which means that farmers in the 1800s had better diets than Britons living in 2025.
When the people shall have nothing more to eat, they will eat the rich.
Starting to see the similarities, and we're not done because Piers had this to say.
No, there are more people on food stamps in this country, which is where you're so poor you have to literally queue up and get stamps for food, right?
Oh, he's got it, he might have it. Oh, no, wait.
I mean, there is a caveat. There is less child poverty now than there's ever been in the history of the recorded planet. People also, to make you also feel happy, people are living longer than they've ever done in history. They're living healthier because we're curing so many more diseases.
That may be true globally, but in the UK it's gone backwards. We have got diseases from the Victorian era returning to the UK.
Water is a lot cleaner than it's ever been.
In a recent report, it's been found that a record amount of sewage is being discharged into rivers and seas around England. Data revealed that last year, raw sewage was discharged by private water companies for more than 3.6 million hours, an 105% increase on the previous year.
And it's about to get worse, because Marie Antoinette never said let them eat cake, but Piers Morgan says let them watch football. Have a listen.
I've interviewed some of the richest people ever. I've interviewed some very poor people. I've got mates who've got money. I've got mates who've got no money. And the one common denominator I can tell you is you get happy rich people and you get miserable rich people, and you get happy poor people and you get miserable poor people. And there's no, to me, there's not a direct correlation. I remember going to South Africa, to the townships in Soweto for the first time. And the one thing that struck me, I said this to the people that were showing me around, but what struck me was they were joyous people in the townships, utterly joyous, singing, dancing, everything. They had nothing. And then I thought about some of the dinner parties I've been to with a lot of rich people. Yep. Miserable bastards, all of them. All because they're always constantly chasing the drug of more money, more material things, more whatever. In other words, money is no guarantee whether you have it or not that you're going to be happy.
Piers has done a let them eat cake moment, and Gary nails it.
With three of us here, I suspect 3 multimillionaires telling us it's possible to be poor and happy, being watched by a lot of ordinary people who are going to lose their homes. They're going to lose their fucking homes, Piers. They're going to lose their homes. I've got friends, they don't eat, so the kids can eat, and they think the kids don't notice, The kids fucking notice, okay? Look, you and I...
No, there are more people on food stamps in this country, which is where you're so poor you have to literally queue up and get stamps for food, right? Which should never be happening in a country
Just
like
to be clear, I'm not telling anyone to be poor and happy. I want people to be as happy and fulfilled as they possibly can be. What I'm talking about is creating the conditions that will allow people to live a life that they want to live and work a job that gives
the conditions of the 50s.
Well, no,
create the conditions of the 60s.
When the tax rate under FDR was at 90% and was continued all the way up to Eisenhower, and gave America one of the highest standards of living anywhere in the world. And this brings me back to the French Revolution. Part of the cause was that inequality. Part of the cause was also the lack of food, things that we're starting to experience now. And yet, what needed to happen was a redistribution of wealth, and the first two classes, the first two estates, the aristocracy and the church, and we can include the monarchy, didn't want to share that wealth and wanted all the burden to be put onto the poorest. Have a listen to what Piers had to say.
So your solution, I completely disagree with, which is, oh, let's just take more from those people. They have too much. And if we only give it to the government, which whether you're in this country or in my country, I think it's fairly obvious that most of our governments are completely fraudulent and backwards and doing virtually nothing
Dave,
right at
who's
this
doing
point.
the taking? Who's doing the taking? Which group in our society is getting richer and which group is getting poorer?
So again,
who is doing the taking?
Again, so I accept that the rich are getting
Listen,
richer.
I'm just
and
here
the
to
poor
protect
are
my
getting
people.
poorer.
I'm just here to protect my people.
I think what you would
I
want
think we're
to
agreed
do
about the reality.
Right,
What we're disagreeing about is the solution.
is the solution, and the solution is get the government out of the way. Stop spending. Stop.
But you think the government should be much more involved?
Let me take you by a hand and lead you through the streets of London. I'll show you something.
But again, that's because your government clearly has done policies, it seems you both are in agreement on that, that hasn't created the conditions for economic prosperity.
Ah yes, austerity, the very thing that wrecked the British economy, and Donald Trump is enforcing in the United States right now.
Might want to talk about importing people that you then had to put on the dole.
They've been slashing the state for 14 years, boss. They slashed the state, they slashed the state, they slashed the state.
So you think if the state
and now my
was
friends'
only...
kids don't have no places to go, they don't have no local services,
if the
the police barely exist,
things would be better.
The hospitals aren't working, the schools are shutting down.
Bill Burr's rant about billionaires mirrors the rhetoric of French revolutionaries who rallied against the elite hoarding wealth while ordinary people suffered. Figures like Robespierre and Marat, they both said similar things about the inequalities and the growing inequalities in French society. Something we currently see in British society, with billionaires ever growing and poverty ever increasing. And the solutions that are constantly offered by the millionaires is continued austerity. Whatever you do, do not tax the rich. And one of the things that really kicks all of this off is the fact that there's no social mobility. You're either born into the right class or you're not, and therefore you're protected from taxes and you've given some level of security. No, it is important to say that not all nobles and clergy were rich. And in modern Britain, there are similar problems. You can't take on rich people without a lawyer, and that costs money. Only a few can avoid inheritance tax. Only a few can afford to stash their cash in a tropical island. Once upon a time, wealth inequality pushed society to the edge. That time was not so different from today. The question is, what happens next?
We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't. We're slowly learning that fact, and we're very, very pissed off.
Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you shocked at what you've heard? Did you agree with Gary, or did you agree with Piers? Once again, thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters. You keep this channel going and growing. If you'd like to become one, please look at the link in the description. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Bye for now.